All right. I know some. I'm like, I know. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Sheriff Balaam here to another series of Did You Know? First of all, like I tell you every time, please make sure you hit the like button so you can stay connected and get the notifications from things that the Sheriff's Office does and we put out on social media. And today's series, and I'll introduce my guest in just a minute, is Did You Know the Washoe County Sheriff's Office has a Women in Law Enforcement Committee. And so we started that committee about mid-2021 to bring women in the Washoe County Sheriff's Office that are in law enforcement together. And we're going to talk with my guest here in a minute who sits on that committee of how do we generate, how do we encourage, how do we break the barriers down of women in law enforcement, and more specifically, women in law enforcement at the Sheriff's Office. And so with that, I have Deputy Skyler Matthews. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
So give everybody a little bit, how long have you been in the Sheriff's Office?
Just about a year.
Just about a year.
Yeah.
How do you like it so far?
I love it. It's great. I'm so happy. This is the career I've always wanted. So
Awesome. And so, you joined the Women in Law Enforcement Committee, and we were chatting about it right before we came onto this. An email went out mid last year. And when you saw that email, what did you first think?
Just how excited I am to be a part of a committee that's dedicated to change for women in law enforcement and supportive for women in law enforcement. And I can tell you that those of us that are on the committee are so ecstatic to have your support. And
I appreciate you joining. That was one thing when we talked about this, because Lieutenant Barboza kind of chairs that committee, who is currently assigned to detectives, was we know a couple things. Just from one working side by side, and for me personally, my wife was a deputy sheriff here, so I saw some of those struggles that she went through, and some of those challenges that maybe the men don't face in this career that she faced. And more importantly, I think what we've seen working side by side is when it comes to families, and that's where, at least for my wife, she had to make that decision, and she kind of sacrificed her career when we had children, so that she could take care of the kids, and then I got to go do the fun stuff. And I know we always talk about the stuff she missed out on. And when you have, either both, like myself and my wife, or if you have, your significant other outside, it's challenging when you start talking about families.
Absolutely.
And the shift work and everything. But we know a couple things about women in law enforcement. One, they reduce citizen complaints. They reduce use of forces. They bring, and working side by side, they bring a different perspective of how to maybe address critical incidents or just decision making as a whole. And again, I always use the example, watching my wife. She worked in House 3 with the mental health inmates that were our most volatile, right?
Right.
And you could watch this little 5'4" control these, mentally unstable inmates just by the way she presented herself and how she talked and how she work side by side with her things. And so I want to ask you a couple questions. I know you've only been here a year, right? But we were talking before. What are some of the initial challenges and how long did you want to be in law enforcement? Let me ask that first.
So I wasn't really sure about what I wanted to do when I got into college, but then I started taking some criminology and criminal justice classes my freshman year, and that's really where it sparked. I was fortunate enough to get like a community service officer position in a small agency back in Oregon. And that was really just where the love continued to grow and spark. And so then I moved out here and found the Sheriff's Office, and here I am.
So. I love it. So let me ask this: as you started your career in law enforcement, did you have any reservations or any concerns before you jumped into it, or you took some criminal justice courses? Did you have any concerns before you came to this profession?
Initially, yeah. Mostly. Eventually wanting to become a mom and start a family and things like that. That's a very big hurdle that you have to eventually get over as a woman in law enforcement. But fortunate enough, part of our committee is actually discussing a way in which we might be able to bring in a childcare ability for us to be able to host that or be part of it with our local first responders in our community. So I think that we may not necessarily have that resource right now, but we're working towards it. And so that makes me honestly very excited to continue my profession, knowing that even if it's not going to be for me, it's going to be for the other people that I work with who are moms or dads.
I love it. And so you do CJ classes. You got that job at a small organization, then you came to Reno, applied at the sheriff's office, went through the whole background process, and then the academy. And so that little perspective, did it give you a clue about what you were about to enter just from just the basic training that we provide in the background? Did you have an idea?
A little bit, yeah. It made me super excited because, you know, it's not every day you get to drive super fast cars through a course, and, you know, you get paid to do it. So, but then you also get the, you know, classroom side of things where you learn how to talk to people through our CIT skills and things like that. Because at the end of the day, being able to talk to somebody is going to be more important than having to chase somebody down a street. So
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there. And so your first year, before we get into the committee, what has been the biggest challenge for you so far?
I just learning how to become my own deputy, how to gather everything from all of my peers through all of my FTOs, and deciding what I wanted to take and leave in order to make myself the best person and the best deputy that I could be.
I love it. So you joined this committee, right? And so the committee's been starting, and you just came back from a class, and I'd like to talk about that in a minute.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what are the initial goals of the committee? Because I remember, you know, we had that first meeting, you know, and I kind of threw out some ideas, but then what's the committee? What are the kind of three main goals I believe you guys have identified so far?
Yeah. So eventually we want to increase the amount of women that work for the sheriff's office. And through that, we want to increase our recruitment, retention, and promotion of the female deputies. So in order to accomplish those goals, we have our monthly meetings that we sit down and make sure that we're progressing to where we want to be. We're brainstorming potential resources for the women that work for us. And overall, we want to create a supportive environment for the women that work for us and make sure that they feel prepared and that they're just supported throughout their entire process, because this is an amazing career, and we want to make sure that the women are going to come here and stay here and just enjoy it while they're here.
Absolutely. And then work their way through not only the whole office, but start working up through the ranks.
Yes.
Correct?
Exactly.
I love it. So one of the things I know the committee threw out is the 30 on 30.
Yes.
So let me tell our viewers out there, what is the 30 on 30, and how do you think that'll benefit the sheriff's office?
So the 30 for 30 initiative, essentially the biggest goal of it is to increase the amount of women that work for the sheriff's office. So our total percentage of our commission staff, we want it to be 30% women by the year 2030. So basically recruitment, retention, promotion, just like our committee is wanting to increase. That's really part of this initiative, which is amazing because it's a national initiative, and there's a lot of agencies that are, you know, taking that step forward. I know right now we're at 21.6%, so we're actually farther ahead than the national average, which is amazing. But we eventually do want to get up to that 30%. So if we're able to implement that in the sheriff's office, it'll only increase the amount of women that we have here, which will help the young people like me see, hey, they're there, I can get there too.
And that was, you know, you hit on a point we were talking in there, because, you know, I love to ask new employees, you know, what are your goals? Have you set goals for your career? And I asked you the same question, and you said at some point after you know, move around the sheriff's office, you wanted to promote.
Yeah.
But there's a key thing you said about promotion and the mentorship. And that goes with the 30 for 30 or 30 by 30.
Yeah.
Is to have those not only 30% just the deputy ranks, but it's the 30% through the ranks, so that you have those mentors. And that was the one thing I took away just, you know, as we were chatting, you know, that you have aspirations, but it was, you know, you've kind of relied upon just in your first year, those mentors and reaching out, you know, whether challenges or questions. How has that helped you the first year?
It's honestly been huge. I think that having somebody that you're able to lean on, that you're able to bounce questions off of, and that has been there. They already know the questions and the answers before you've even asked those questions. So I think it's been a huge support, and I find myself mentoring the new people that are coming in just out of thankfulness for my previous mentors.
And so, again, although you've only been here, you've already experienced a good full year of things with the pandemic, and our last legislation, so police reform. That again, we see those cycles when it comes to police reform every couple of decades, right? So that's something new. But if somebody's out there right now, and it's a woman who's thinking about, you know what, maybe either I'm just finishing college or just, got to be 21. So I turned 21, maybe they didn't go to college, but they want this career, or they're finishing college, or they're in a career and they're like, I just don't like this. I want to go in law enforcement. What is one thing you would tell them about this profession?
It's honestly worth it. I would say that if you're thinking about this career, it's worth every single second that you can put towards it. If you have any questions about the career as far as what it's like to be a woman in law enforcement, you can reach out to our committee. We're more than happy to answer all of those questions, but it's just an amazing career when you get started. And even though we may not have all the resources right now, we're working on them. So by the time that you get through that process and you're here, we will have those resources for you, or we'll be there.
And I love it. And let's talk about one of those, because the child care. I know my wife and I both would have loved that. We had twins initially, and so when you have that shift work, I mean, it's difficult because kind of like either when we bring new deputies in, or I'm promoting somebody, or somebody's retiring, right? We always look at whoever their significant other is, whether the husband, wife, boyfriend, girl, whoever it is, right? And I think them because, and if they have kids, because some in those careers, they miss special events, right? Because either something's going on, so you miss the birthdays or you miss the holidays, and so with the daycare, kind of what is the committee kind of looking at so far? Yeah,
so it's a very rough draft. It's still in the thoughts it's still in the works of our thoughts and our conversations, but ideally what we would like to be able to do is we'd like to be able to have a spot where people who work for not just the sheriff's office, but our local first responder agencies, and they're able to drop their kids off, feel safe with the people that they're leaving them with, but also having it available during these shift work hours, because that's so difficult. I know people who currently work for us who are struggling with that, with our shift work and making sure that they're able to get their kids to daycare and also getting to their shift on time. So we want to be part of that change for the better. And by just getting towards this point of being able to have our spot, a good person that we're able to rely on to be able to take care of the children, and then also be able to pick them up and make sure that we're also a good partner.
Well, and I know, like, you're in the jail, and maybe people don't realize, what is your shift right now?
I currently work 7 at night to 7 in the morning.
So it's 12 hours.
It's 12 hours, yeah.
If you had a family, right, and that's like you just pointed out, that's a key thing, is you have that drop-off time, and then you have to get to work early. So it's not like you just drop them off, and you typically have to come here and put your uniform on. Many deputies and everybody else keep the uniforms here. And then at the end of their shift, you got to get undressed and then go drive and pick them up. So for those children, whoever it is, they're in daycare. If you don't have somebody else to help kind of pick them up, it could be for a long time. So that is a big struggle, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, another thing your class, you just went to a class in Nashville.
Yes.
Right? And tell everybody kind of what was that class about?
Okay, so it was our Women in Law Enforcement seminar class. It was all the way over in Tennessee. It brought together women all across the United States who are in law enforcement, federally, state, county, I mean, you name it, they were there. It just brought us all together and was able to allow us to be able to be mentors for each other, get into contact, see where all of the different agencies are with the 30 for 30 initiative, if they even are a part of it, or if they're not, give them a piece of what it's about. We talked about the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and how there's all of these resources that are out there that's also available to the women in law enforcement as well, no matter the rank that you're at. But I would say the biggest piece that I took away from that is how important it is to have a good mentor. And fortunate for me, I was able to connect with some really amazing people there that I would be able to consider as a mentor in the future.
That's awesome. And one thing, because again, I asked you, besides that mentorship, was one of the ideas, I believe it was San Diego did, about recruitment.
Yes.
And kind of explain what did they do there?
So they essentially just put together a little half day for the women that were in their community that were maybe interested in law enforcement. So they were able to run them through a little bit of what the academy is like, a little bit of what their department is like. They were able to see some of the women that currently work for their department throughout all different ranks and special assignments like SWAT and K9 and detectives and those things. So they were able to get a little sneak peek into the agency. They were able to ask any questions that they have of what the process is like to get hired. What resources do they have for the women in that office? And just be able to gather as much information as what they can and learn as much about that department as what they can.
So I would assume the committee is going to bring forth an idea that we could do here.
I would love to be able to do that. Yeah.
And I look forward to it. Another thing, so although you've still been and you've experienced a lot, what is some advice just from what you've experienced or talking to your peers on the committee? Would you have told yourself prior to coming into this profession, or what would you tell somebody out there that's like, okay, sounds good? What advice would you give them or yourself?
I would say find your voice. If you know what you want to do and you're passionate about it, speak up about it or go and do it. Always try to better yourself as a person. So for me, I would have loved to be able to go to more trainings when I was newer. And like you said, I'm fairly new, but this is something that some of my peers talked about, is when we have those training opportunities, go to those, because those are going to help you grow so much, not just as a deputy, but as a person as well. And then the other biggest piece is, as a woman in law enforcement, just the importance of being kind to each other and saying, hey, I'm going here and I want you to come with me. So let's go together, and just uplifting each other.
I love it. That's great advice. That's great advice. Anything else that I haven't hit on about the committee, some of your goals that you would like either our viewers to know? Because I can't say enough about the entire committee. I know we'd love to have them. I thank you for volunteering from the committee. How many are on the committee total?
I would say we're right about 8 people. So we have 2 lieutenants, a sergeant, and then I believe the last 5 of us are all in deputies. But we rank very different in how many years we've been with the agency. So for me, I'm one of the newer ones. So I'm really excited about being the person that brings a kind of fresh perspective into the committee. But some of my partners have been with the sheriff's office for over 15 years. So some of the things that they have personally gone through and would like to see change, they talk about, and things that I would like to see, or if I hear about, like the San Diego department did, and say, hey, this is social media. This is huge for their agency. And I think this is something would be good for us too. So I think overall, it's just an honor to be a part of the committee and also have your backing, because it means the world to us. So. Well,
I can't thank you and your committee enough, because you are core of this whole agency. And so for the input and everything you bring forth, I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
But is there anything we haven't hit on that you want to make sure you hit on and as we close this out, for somebody maybe out there, hopefully deputies, because we need deputies.
Yeah.
Right? We're short. So, but there's somebody that, right, again, I want to be a deputy, or I don't know if there's any other advice you could give them, or anything you want to leave with.
I would say that no matter what, at the end of the day, to be able to make a positive change in your community is huge. And whenever you're ready to start that, the sheriff's office is more than happy to welcome you into our family.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You did a great job. Thank you for being on the committee.
Of course.
And for everybody out there, again, hopefully, if you're a woman in law enforcement, or not in law enforcement, want to be in law enforcement, please look up WashingtonCountySheriff.com. Come knock through our doors. If you know somebody, you now can reach out to Deputy Matthews if you want, and ask, or just come in and ask about this profession. You hit on it. I think it is, as a whole, this is a great organization. This is a great profession to be in. Again, please send in your questions. If you have some more questions, we'll make sure we ship them to the committee or to Deputy Matthews. She would love to answer them. I know her committee would too.
Absolutely.
So if you're a woman out there that's thinking about law enforcement, or maybe you're in, and maybe where you're at, you just have some questions, or you want a mentorship, I'm sure you could give some advice. Please send those questions in. And again, don't forget to hit your like so that you get notifications, and stay connected to the sheriff's office as we move through this year. And again, I want to thank you, Deputy Matthews, for joining me. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us for another Did You Know? And I look forward to next month seeing you there. And you all stay safe and have a great day.